Welcome to the Hustle or Bust podcast powered by Paverart. Our mission is simple: to dive deep into the world of entrepreneurship, small business, and all the success, struggle, and challenges that need to be confronted in the pursuit of growth. We celebrate the entrepreneurial spirit, but perhaps most important, we want you to learn at least one idea that you can put into action immediately to make your investment in time worthwhile. On this episode, we break down the president's new executive order outlining $10,000 to $20,000 of student debt forgiveness. But more important than that, we discuss a recent blog post on Hustle or Bust, solving the higher education crisis in America. Solutions, not division. Well, hello, everybody. Once again, it's the Hustle or Bust podcast, powered by Paverart, where the old school meets the new school. And we put school in there. School, in this case, has got something very directly to do with this podcast. And as an old employer and mentor of mine would say when he was not happy, Bull, I got my Red Sox on today. Meet me in my office in 10 minutes. Got you,
your
Jim.
Red Sox, don't you?
It's always stuck with me. And the gentleman that I love that man. He was just a terrific. His name is Jim Tate. Terrific guy, terrific mentor. Penn State grad. Speaking of college, Penn State grad. But
You have your Red Sox on today.
I have my Red Sox on today, and the reason I have my Red Sox on today is because we're talking about something that's cropped up in the news. It's been in the news for quite a while, but it kind of reached a head yesterday. We're talking about, in general, college tuition, but more specifically, the way that the education system, the higher education in this system, has essentially been corrupted.
On the heels of the executive order yesterday of wiping out debt.
On the heels of the executive order, that's right, from the president. In regards to reducing the outstanding debt for certain specific, college graduates.
So why don't we recap it? What I caught in the news is he's wiping out $10,000 of debt if you make under $125,000 as an individual, $250,000 as a family,
Filing jointly, yeah.
and if you're a Pell Grant recipient under those thresholds, it's $20,000.
$20,000.
And he's also delaying the debt repayment or the student loan repayment until December 31st.
Correct.
And this time he means it.
Again.
So January 1st it's going to resume.
Yes, again.
This time he means it.
Yeah, exactly. He means it. And again, I think we need to reiterate here that this is not, although it's going to sound political, it's not a political discussion. This is a discussion about a real problem.
Well, it's a small business issue because you've got to recruit somebody. They could be high school, they could be college, they could be all of that. It affects the labor force in a massive way.
Yeah.
So that's the crux of behind all of it. Politics does intersect with business at times, and there's no bigger issue, I think, that affects small business and all business for that matter than the college education issue and the $1.7 trillion in debt. Well,
I think we would all agree that if we took a political approach to this, nothing would get solved.
We would just bitch back and forth.
That's exactly
it's not fair.
right.
It is fair.
Yeah.
You got to help these kids. You don't have to help these kids, and you go nowhere.
What are you talking about? Who are you to say that? Blah blah. No, that's not where this is going. And what's important to understand is that you've taken this on very seriously. You've convinced me that this is not just a serious problem, but to be partner in doing something about it here at Paverart. Now, we've talked about this before, and it's the Brick by Brick apprenticeship program. In essence, what is the Brick by Brick apprenticeship program?
It's basically an alternative to the conventional 4-year college degree, where you don't put debt on a kid to finance an education, but you still get educated, and you prioritize work and school combined, not just school. So the goal, if you picture two kids 4 years from now, two 18-year-old kids, one goes to college, takes on $40,000 of debt, pursues, pick an example, a marketing degree, a business administration degree, marketing concentration. Kid A is going to Rutgers. He's going to put $40,000 of debt in his head.
Yep.
He's going to do the college experience, however that's defined. Maybe has an internship or two if he's ambitious. Kid B, 18 years old, goes right to work. He's going to enter a brick-by-brick apprenticeship program. He's going to work full-time. He's also going to pursue an education, but it's going to be a low-cost $5,000 total education from something like University of the People. He's going to have discipline and mentorship where he's going to, at the age of 22, 4 years, he's going to have at least $25,000 in the bank. He's going to have no debt, and he's going to have a degree, and he's going to have 4 years worth of work experience. My belief, in my heart of hearts believe, this kid's going to at least equal this kid over here with a conventional degree, if not outstrip him. We've got to prove that out over the next 4 years. We've got to get somebody into that program. That's what the apprenticeship program's meant to do. It's meant to basically say something's got to change in America in terms of, at what point do we wake up as a country? At $5 trillion of debt? Or is 1.7 enough to figure out something's not working here with the higher education program in America?
The idea of having skin in the game and trying to do something about what I consider to be an egregious problem is admirable, and it gives us a position whereby we're not just sitting around bitching about the political football that this has become, and we're not making it politics. We're trying to we're trying to do something about it that is indeed practical. Now, what we have found is that trying to find a person or a group of kids, if you will, 18-year-olds, that will fit this particular mold, this apprenticeship mold, is, and you just said it is a challenge. It is a challenge. But we know they're out there, and anything like this, which is, I don't consider this radical. I consider this rational, not radical. Okay, so we've basically outlined something that we're trying to do to solve the problem for a teenager or a series of teenagers, and also solve the Paverart problem, getting good help.
Yeah, well, and why don't we talk a little bit about the forgiveness / loan delay deal from the government, from the president,
right?
And let's talk about why I think that's a problem, right? So if we take,
well, let's give the facts first. The facts are it's a $300 billion bill. Okay.
Executive order, not a bill.
I'm sorry, executive order. That's yes.
Which is a big distinction.
Oh,
right
that
there.
was a massive mistake on my part. That's right. It was an executive action, but at the same time, it's a $10,000 or $20,000 loan forgiveness, depending on where you qualify, and we already outlined that previously. So, go on.
Well, here's my opinion. And it's a $1.7 trillion debt problem, and it's going to go down $300 million with that forgiveness. Let's, for a moment, forget about the fairness. Forget about the fact that you went to college and you paid your own way, and no one wiped out your debt. So let's take the fairness issue off the side in a minute, and let's just say we wipe out 100% of it, 1.7 trillion, right? Which a lot of people want him to do. Let's take that and let's just hypothetically say it goes down to zero. He's going to wipe it out, 100% of it for everybody. We're going to be, because this bill, the executive action doesn't do anything to solve the problem. It's only a question of how many years will it take us to end up right where we are now, more debt. Because you haven't done anything on the cost. The root cause of all of this is tuition going up 6 times the rate of inflation over 30 years, right? So my school, Northeastern University, used to be $15,000 to $17,000 when I went in the early 90s. Now it's $78,000. That's massive runaway inflation, right? So this executive order didn't do anything for that. So what I did in June, I had a Jerry Maguire moment. I woke up in the middle of the night and I'm like, let me just write down what I would do to solve this issue, or at least to take a shot at it, rather than just bitching about the politics of it, that it's not fair it's your debt, you take it. Forget about that. I can buy into all those arguments. It still doesn't solve the problem, which is, how do you stop this runaway inflation on tuition costs, which is what got us here? So that's my kind of thinking of the problem. You got to solve the problem, and none of this stuff of wiping out debt, stopping the student loan payments, does any of that. The best business in America, if you have to choose any business, it's being a president of a university, in my mind. I wrote an article on this in 2013 that's the best job in America, being a college president. Why? Because you've got this feeder system called high school. You've got parents of high school kids where let's just say 80% of them are shuttling these kids into the college system without any examination of alternatives, with a fully funded backstop called the federal government on the loans. And what does the college president do? I've got 4,000 open seats for my freshman class, and I've got 35,000 applicants all being bankrolled, so I can keep raising tuition 7% a year as far as the eye can see. That's where you want to be. And oh, by the way, I'm not getting taxed on any of my profit. So what happens? My endowment is piling up every single year, tax-free. So that's a great business. This is a for-profit enterprise any which way you slice it.
This is not just the economic laws of supply and demand. 35,000 going for 4,000 seats. It's not just that, because there's the backstop, as you call it. It's a guarantee that the college is going to get its money.
That's right.
There's no way that any student,
it's a distorted market,
can default.
Right.
Okay. You're not getting the bill at the end of the semester. You're also paying the bill up front for each semester. So you're getting your money in advance.
Let's ask the question right up front. If there's such an outcry with 1.7 trillion to relieve some of the debt, all the debt, or some in between,
right,
and then delay the payments, if college was such a great idea, great economic outcome, then why do we have this national outcry? Well, I think at some point the cost has exceeded the benefit to a massive degree. That's why we're having this outcry that we got to help everybody with this. Right?
Now, let's be specific, because some people may not know what you're talking about. The cost has outreached the benefit. In what respect? Are we talking about the degrees that are gotten as a result of incurring all of this college debt, a portion of those degrees getting you into jobs that necessarily are not going to give you or put you in a position to pay that debt back?
I think that's what it is. I think it's you're incurring debt, and there's a cost-benefit analysis. Let's say your debt is $40,000. That's the average.
Right.
It could be $80,000, whatever it is. You've got to be able to service that debt with your income, which is a job. If you can't service that debt with the income, and you're only treading water, you're not even covering the interest, then your job is not rewarding enough to service that debt.
Right.
And hence, it keeps building, right? And then you got the outcry that I can't afford my debt payments. Well, the market value of that degree, whatever that degree is not enough to cover your debt service. So you got to ask yourself the question: is it worth it to incur that much debt for that asset that you got called a degree? If you can't service your debt payments and you're struggling to keep up with it, it's not worth it. I mean, now if you can pay it off in 5 years and then start investing in the stock market, different story.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that concept, the phrase, not the concept, but the phrase, is it worth it? Well, you're asking an 18-year-old, and you're also asking that 18-year-old's parents, who are driven to make sure that their 18-year-old son or daughter is going to get a college degree.
I'm like, I got to go to a barbecue Saturday night. So how can I face my friends and say, Junior's not going to Rutgers? How do I have that conversation? So, of course he's going to go to Rutgers. I'm going to a barbecue with my friends.
If that's the standard,
of course I'm being sarcastic.
Then let's talk about the 18-year-old. Are we expecting 18-year-olds with the kind of high school educations they're getting now and the counseling or lack thereof to make a decision as to what degree they want, number one, number two, where they want to go to college, and number three, if they want to go to college? We're asking an 18-year-old to do that. I was 18.
Right.
I fathered two 18-year-olds. Okay. That's a tough decision, especially when you're not equipped to make it.
Financial literacy is not where it needs to be.
Financial literacy, the actual economic outcome of what you're getting yourself into, and the fact that it's not going to happen until 4 years down the road. And by the way, 4 years down the road, you're going to be 22. Mm-hmm. Not much more than 18 in terms of, a maturity, an economic maturity,
We've talked ad nauseum on this podcast as we talk about the apprenticeship program that the teenage workforce participation rate is in the low 30s, high 20s,
heading to 25.
So they're not working. If you're not getting a paycheck, you don't know the value of a dollar. You might be getting a $15 or $30 allowance from your parents, so you know how to kind of spend.
Yeah,
but generally,
that epidemic is spreading.
Yeah, so financial literacy is underdeveloped, and the workforce participation rate is underdeveloped. 75% of teens not working.
Great point.
So they generally don't know the value of a dollar.
Right.
If they don't know the value of a dollar in their pocket because they're not bringing money in, then how do you make that $100,000 decision or $200,000 decision for college, financed by debt, and then to think 4 years down the road, they got no shot. And if the parents are willing them into college, taking debt on they're part of the problem, I think, right? This stuff is compounding, and we got a $1 trillion problem, multi-trillion-dollar problem here.
So what you're basically doing, the only thing that you have to concern yourself with if you're a college is attracting the people to come to your school.
Right.
And that doesn't seem to be an issue.
Or moving up in the rankings or whatever you want to do to outcompete somebody where you can
We'll
charge
talk
more
about
and more.
the U.S. News and World Report rankings at some other point.
So
but that's
the solutions, right? So now I'm like, all right, I wake up in the middle of the night, my Jerry Maguire moment, and I'm gonna document how to fix this problem. My solution number one is get the government out of financing backstopping the student loans, right? So then what do? These kids they don't have $400,000 or $300,000 burning a hole in their pocket. They still got to pay for it. Yeah, you're going to still get loans. If the government's not going to back the loans, who's going to back the loan? You're going to privatize it. So now instead of Uncle Sam and the U.S. taxpayer guaranteeing a loan, we're going to go over to here to Bank of America or whatever private lending institution. Now, what do you think if you're Bank of America, you're the CEO of Bank of America, and you've got Junior here who wants to go to a $200,000 4-year nut, and he wants to finance that with 35-40% debt. How do you underwrite that? Do you make that loan?
Well, my first question is, what assets do you have, Mr. or Mrs. 18, Mr. or Miss 18-year-old?
So he's got zero.
Yeah. What collateral do you have that will help me, lend you the money? Well, you have none.
Right.
Okay. Now your parents do. Your parents may have that. So it's a toss-up, regardless. Anywhere you go, somebody's going to pay that bill. All right.
Are they going to be more discriminating or less discriminating if the government's not behind it?
Oh, they're going to be much more discriminating.
Right. Are they going to
because now it's their money.
Right. So are they going to give the loan to a philosophy major? Probably not. That's
right. We can get into the subtleties of the actual choice of what your degree is going to be.
But I think the first step is they're going to actually underwrite the thing. Right now they're not underwriting it because the government's backstopping it.
Right.
So now the government comes out of the equation, and now Bank of America and all the private lending institutions have to underwrite and make a risk assessment on this kid going to this school for this major. It's going to be far fewer loans. I think it's pretty safe to say far fewer loans or customers going into the college system with privatizing the process.
Impact on the college and how that idea, that theory changes the way they react.
Now you're the president of the university,
right?
And let's just say you got 1 million kids under the current system coming in to the system. It's probably 10 million kids. Now you privatize it, and now you've got underwriting decisions, and you got more risk on the loan. You're the president of the university, and now your customer base of potential customers has reduced. Let's just say massive 40%. Are you more likely or less likely to take a hard look at taking that 7% price increase on tuition?
Exactly.
You're going to have to say, holy shit.
No, it's...
we got to get more competitive here. We're going to have to innovate. Welcome to fucking America. First step, get the government out of the lending business. That's, in my mind, number one. Now, I know where people are going. Yeah, but now you're going to have less college-educated kids. We're not going to be competitive. We'll address that in a minute. Step number two, why if you're a kid and you're 22 years old, you graduate or not, you're still on the hook for the debt, whether you got the degree or not. You've got $50,000 of debt in your head. Why can't you bankrupt yourself out of it? You can't right now.
Corporations do it every day.
Corporations do? You can't bankrupt yourself out of it.
Couples do it every day. Families do it every day.
Right. So let's go back to the executive order. The president said if you're at $125,000 or less, $10,000 forgiven, right? And let's just say you only owe $9,000, so now you're off the hook. But there's also kids that have $60,000 of debt, and the only way we decided The only discrimination of it was 125 or under, and if you have a Pell Grant or not. If you got a Pell Grant, then you get $20,000. So let's play this out. If you're making $100,000 and you're 40 years old, you're in Florida, and you're single, you mean to tell me that's the same circumstance to this person over here that might be making single mom, $40,000, living in New York City, raising 3 kids? Are those the same circumstances?
No.
They both qualify for the debt being forgiven.
Right.
This guy's making $100,000 a year, single, living in an apartment. He's got a little bit more capability of paying off that loan over here. Make it bankruptable, and guess what? Both of those, if they choose to get it bankruptable and bankrupt themselves, number one, there's consequences. Bankruptcy has consequences. 7 years. Put these 2 people in front of a judge and let the judge decide, are their individual circumstances worthy of getting that money, that debt that they owe to the government, bankruptable. I think, here's what I trust a bankruptcy judge more than the 125 and under threshold to make a fair decision versus a government blunt policy. What do you think of that?
First of all, I think it's inevitably more fair. Okay.
What's the judge going to say to the kid making $100,000 living alone? Maybe he's driving a Tesla, whatever his circumstances are. He's got to go make a case.
The playing field has now got leveled, and here's why. The one thing we've not talked about, and maybe we won't even talk about this, but there's a tremendous group of people over here that paid the bill. Okay?
The fairness issue.
You can call it fair. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it work ethic. People who took economic responsibility for a loan or the bills they have to pay. And in some cases, stress themselves out to the max for years to get that paid off so that they wouldn't put that on their kid's head. Now, the playing field is fair. This person over here that didn't take a lot of that into consideration when they took out the loan, there's a way out for them. There's a fair economic way out for them. And we're saying that's bankruptcy.
So now we got the judge. We got a court system that adjudicates all of these cases.
That's exactly right.
And he's got to go, the $100,000 earner has got to go make the case in front of the judge, and the judge makes the decision. Versus the single mom over here, different circumstances, he's going to make a decision there. Now, we still haven't addressed, and we're going to right now, the college president. Where is the colleges that have been jacking the prices up 7% a year for 30 fucking years? Where are they at the table? They're not yet. So this kid over here or this kid.
Okay, well, before you do that, why are they not at the table? Because they don't need to be.
It's not part of the system.
It's not part of
the They're not taxable. They're not anything. So it's a money-making machine that we've allowed to go on by the government funding the loans. So we're going to pull the government out of the loan process, number one. Number two, the $1.7 trillion, we're going to make it eligible for bankruptcy, and let the judge and our court system decide should they be bankruptable. And now the kid's got consequences, right? Or the adult, it could be. They've got to live with a bankruptcy, and the judge is going to make the determination on the case. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to wipe out the judge is going to say, all right, you owe $60,000, we're going to relieve you of $40,000 because you've got really hard circumstances.
Wait a minute, Mark. What do you mean relieve? You're not relieving anything.
Well, you're transferring.
Somebody's got to pay that.
Someone's
bill.
got to pay for it, right? But let's forget about the transferring issue. You got to get solutions going here.
I just want to make.
We're looking for better, bad decisions.
I want to bookmark that because we got to get back to that.
Let's say he transfers or we relieve, whatever term you want to give it, $40,000 of the $60,000. There's still no consequences for the university, and you got to get consequences. So we're going to take $40,000, and this person went to pick your university of choice. Doesn't matter. We're going to go back to that university, and we're going to say, bad outcome here. They got a degree from your school, Mr. President of the university. You should have some consequences here. Now, I don't quite know what that is, but they're sitting on, let's say, a $200 million endowment or a $1 billion endowment, and we just determined that they can't pay this. They got a degree for whatever reason, doesn't seem to be carrying the nut of the payment. That $40,000 that we transferred to the U.S. taxpayer, we got to relieve some of that from your endowment. Now, I don't know if we tax the endowment. I don't know what that is. But that school that had this bad outcome with the kid should have some skin in the game, and let's get them with some skin in the game. Let's just say half of that amount, we got to tax from the endowment. And insurance, if I'm an employer of a small business, which I am, if I've got a long list of people getting hurt on a job, my workman's comp rate is going to go through the roof because by definition, I'm an unsafe employer, and I become an insurance
As
risk.
it should.
Right. If I get a drug DUI, my license gets suspended, and guess what my insurance is going to do? Through the next 10 years, it's going to go sky high because I am a high risk.
Yeah.
This person that got relieved of $40,000 of debt from this university, let's just say there's 3,000 from that university. That school is a higher risk. That school is not producing a degree or a program that's allowing these kids to service the debt. They better get some skin in the game. We better start taxing it. We better start taking some money. Now, go back to the president of all these universities, 1.7 trillion. It's now bankruptable. Let's say a third of them go through the bankruptcy courts. And all that money, all that debt, some of it is getting relieved. We're going back to the university with it. What is that college president going to think? Do you think that's going to put pressure on how they evaluate their programs?
It's going to put more than pressure on it. It's going to become mandated.
They're going to be shaking in their boots, which is the whole freaking point here. They've got no skin in the game. So now we're going to have less loans being given because we're going to privatize it. We're going to allow millions of kids to get bankruptable, and they're going to make their own choice with responsibility. Do they want to plead that case in front of a bankruptcy judge? The bankruptcy judge adjudicates it, and if they relieve $1, they're going back to that university to get that money. Now you've got accountability. Now you got skin in the game here.
Well, now the college, traditionally up to this point, is making a decision as to whether or not little Jimmy or little Sally are worthy of coming to their school. Are they going to be able to handle the curriculum? Do they have what it takes when you look at their bona fides? You know, their SAT scores, their ranking in class, what their grade point average was. They're making the decision based on that, ostensibly. We know there's other things involved too. But now they're not making those kinds of decisions just based on that anymore. If I hear what you're saying correctly, they're making those decisions based on, or should be making those decisions based on other items.
Consequences.
What other items are we talking about that they're going to be making the decision on whether Jimmy or Sally are going to get into their college? Are they actually going to take a look at, well, it looks like you're going to, are they responsible for looking at this and saying, well, if you're going to get a degree in accounting, there's a pretty good chance you're going to get a good paying job when you get out of here, when you graduate in 4 years or however long.
Well, here's the biggest unintended consequence. If you're the president of a university and you've got 4,000 kids to admit in your freshman class, the biggest risk here now is if I'm going to be liable, let's say I'm the president of the university. All right, Olivito, you're telling me that if this kid goes bankrupt down the road, you're coming after me for the money or a portion of the money. That's risky, right? You're telling me that the government's not backstopping the loans. Now that 30,000 kids I used to evaluate turned into 15 for 4. So I got less customers to pick from. The most negative consequence is, well, screw it. I'm only going to admit rich kids that can afford it, that are not going to put debt in their head. And that's a bad outcome, right?
Yep.
But that is a real potential negative consequence. So we'll deal with that in a minute. But that is now you've got less customers and you've got consequences for the debt. Now you've got a system with less customers and now I got consequences. Maybe I don't offer that non-valuable degree. That's possible, right? Maybe I lower my tuition because I got to get more competitive because now I got to compete for these kids and I got consequences.
Well, they're forced to. We're not saying that the college, well, we are saying that to a certain extent, the college has to take on a risk assessment protocol. And it's not a risk assessment as to whether this student's smart enough to handle the curriculum. It's a risk assessment as to whether or not they're going to graduate in 4 years and they're going to be able to pay the bill.
Well, you know what else they're going to do?
But the argument can be made by the college, well, wait a minute, that's not our business. We're not in that business. Well, you can get in that business. Every business in the United States is in the business of risk assessment. Well, the institution that they're borrowing the money from, they're going to take that. They're going to take that a part of that risk assessment. They're obviously, that's their business. That's the only thing they're in business for is risk assessment. Am I going to get this paid off? Am I going to get this money back? And they're going to take a hard look at the curriculum that this student's going to get involved with. And when they take a hard look at that curriculum, they're going to decide whether or not, sorry, Sally, this particular curriculum that you're looking at, I don't see that getting paid off anytime soon.
In Economics 101, they teach you a simple lesson. It's called revenue. Revenue is a simple formula. It's price times quantity. I sold 100 mugs at $5 a piece. My revenue was $500. In the world of college, they constrain the quantity. They limit the supply. So 4,000 can very easily be 8,000 seats if they choose to let it be 8,000 seats. The rankings have a real influence on this. They want small class sizes. So to expand the number, they either got to build more buildings, that's expensive, it's real estate,
right,
or they got to go online, they got to innovate. But you can maintain your revenue, take your 4,000 to 20,000.
Well,
increase your supply.
What you're talking about, the current model will be the 4,000.
That's right.
Okay.
Until you start changing the game here.
Right.
We've got an artificially constrained model on supply as it comes to college seats. That adds to the increase in escalation of the price. A college president doesn't think like a businessman. They just keep adding staff. They keep adding buildings. They've got no incentive. When your price can go up 7% a year just because it can, you've got no incentive to lower your cost, to innovate, to improve the quality of your product. None of the free market capitalism things that we got to deal with Paverart. We got to think about cost. We got to think about price. We got to think about attracting customers. Yes, they don't do any of that.
As I recall, when I took one of my 5 macro/micro economic courses in college, I think that's referred to as inelasticity of demand. Okay, it's the difference between buying a Cadillac. This is what was the example back then: buying a Cadillac and buying a Pinto. Okay, a Ford Pinto. Most people will tell that I'm aging myself now, but the inelasticity of demand basically dictates that you can just keep raising the price. Keep raising the price and people will pay it. And in this case, it's being artificially propped up.
Right, so you've got constrained supply, 4,000 seats.
Exactly.
You've got unlimited customers, so you just keep raising the price, right? You got to stop that. You got to stop the conditions where price keeps going up ad infinitum.
Right.
Then you got to try and also relax the restrictions or the environment that causes you to constrain supply.
Bingo.
All right, so I'm going to take the government out of financing the loans. It's going to get privatized. It's going to lower the people coming into college, the numbers. That's going to pressure the price on tuition. We're going to make it bankruptable with consequences. So now if this kid goes bankrupt and is coming back to me as a university, that's going to pressure them to change their model. Now we've got to increase the supply of kids that want to get educated in practical programs. Yes, it might be marketing, it might be accounting, philosophy. How about carpentry? How about plumbing? How about the trades? We got a trade shortage in America. What if we had a national goal that said we want 10 million kids getting educated in trades, in whatever degree? Let's expand the definition of what education means, and let's get 10 million more of them, and let's get them low cost. Let's get them at $5,000 for the entire degree. It already exists. It's University of the People. Oh, by the way, there's also another case study out there. How is Purdue University, shout out to Mitch Daniels, former governor of Indiana, how can they go 11 years, keeping tuition deadline flat, same price as it was 11 years ago? Because he innovated. He said, if I increase the supply and I get more revenue that way, I can keep, even though my costs might be going up, if I get more people coming to my school, he's thinking like a business, I can keep my tuition flat.
Correct.
One guy in the whole freaking country has figured this out. Maybe we ought to study what is going on at Purdue University and figure out how to make that happen. The reality is 99% of the university presidents are not doing that. We got one example I can think of in Purdue, top flight university that's figuring out how to do this. Anyway, back to increasing the supply of kids that want to get educated. How do you do that? Well, it's kind of the brick by brick apprenticeship program. You need small businesses stepping up to say, number one, half of these jobs you don't need a degree for, and they're mandating a degree. So that's also feeding the excess supply of kids going to conventional programs because the employers are saying bachelor's degree or 10 years of experience. That's crazy. So we got to kind of rewire business owners' mentality of not having the college be the screening tool for jobs within their business. So that's an education process. But if you had 10 million more kids, that would provide competition to the conventional college system. So you got to figure out, is that tax incentives? Is there ways to do that? Is it apprenticeship programs like we're doing it brick by brick? Is it smart data management? Google is hiring kids without a college degree. How can the most successful cash machine in the world do a certification program, hire people into their organization, and other companies can't? So we got to follow the lead of the Googles of the world.
Well, the Googles of the world can make that work. They have the capability of making that work. They've got the money, they've got the brains, they've got the capability of anybody that wants to, in other words, somebody wants to go to work for Google. We're going to train you on how to work for Google. Okay, we're going to train you in this job. You have to have certain minimum requirements here, but you don't need a degree. You really don't need a degree.
Let me, a little off topic, but kind of related. Kim was the other night, we're sitting around, we're watching TV, and she goes, "Hey, you ever hear of this Bama Rush thing on TikTok?" I go, "Bama Rush, what is that?" She goes, "Type in Bama Rush on TikTok." So I type in Bama Rush, and it is thousands and thousands of videos, girls that are competing for a sorority, and they're doing this dance, this provocative dance. They're basically showing this whole, it's a catch-all hashtag for competing for a sorority or a fraternity. And I'm looking at video after video, and I'm thinking, Jesus, if I'm a parent paying for my kid to go to school, and whether they have debt or not, this is what, how does this dance and competing for a sorority map to anything in the real world? You're going to college to prepare you for a career. And I'm seeing video after video of all this bullshit dancing of competing for a sorority. Now, I know that we're going to trigger people here, right? I went to a fraternity. I went to a sorority. It was the best experience. Yeah. Okay. We didn't have $1.7 trillion of debt in 1985 when you were in your precious sorority or fraternity. Now we've got social media amplifying all this bullshit. So tell me how that maps to a college experience when we've got one. All right, so okay, I get it. It's leadership, it's networking. I get all that. We didn't have 1.7 trillion. We didn't have college tuition at $70,000. We didn't have all of this stuff. That now, you parents. And by the way, I'm looking at all the comments. Oh, I went to Sig Ep. I went to Theta Delta Chi. I went to all that, and they're encouraging all this. So now maybe they're rich and they don't have debt on their kids, but 2/3 of all the kids graduate and have debt. And I'm looking at this Bama Rush thing. Now, I don't know how big this is, the Greek life thing, but that does not map to getting a practical job that can service the debt when we've got this national outcry. Kind of unrelated, but I'm looking at this thinking, we have lost the script on why you go to college.
Look, and we both have experiences doing this.
How's that for a rant?
Good.
Yeah, thanks.
I give it a 9.
I work on it.
I give it a 9.
On my commute back home, I just, how does this freaking? They're jumping all around. They're doing cartwheels. They're wearing practically nothing. Now I'm like talk about old school.
What we need to do is we need to record the phone calls that we have on both of our commutes home, because those calls are precious. They're unbelievable. But
if I saw Dominic doing Bama Rush, I
first
think
of
I'd come
all,
out of my skin.
First thing you do is get in your car and drive right to the school. One of the things that I think is important to understand here is under no circumstances are we downplaying the what could be construed as the importance of a college education. If done properly, it's a training ground for kids coming out of high school that can be very, very, very valuable. But when the business of college becomes number one, it's gotten to the point where we actually think it's important to forgive loans or portions of loans. These are fiscal decisions. These are not academic decisions. Okay? Academic decisions seem to have been lost in the midst of all of this. And I all I can tell you is, we both have experience with college. Me on 2 different planes. I went to college, and there was my wife and I put our 2 children through college. And I shouldn't say that. My kids helped put themselves through college too. Okay, they had skin in the game. They were responsible for this, meaning you were not going to have. I don't feel like going to school anymore, Dad. Excuse me? Well, what are you talking about? We've spent $125,000 so far on your college education, and you're going to drop out? Well, it's not for me. I think I'm just going to go get a job. Oh, okay. All right. how are we going to handle? We got to pay this loan off, and you've got nothing to show for. This is happening all over the country. Okay, this system that we're talking about, changing from the old system to the new system, would eliminate a lot of those discussions.
Well,
number one, and number two, they're woefully prepared to understand the economic implications of not getting your degree, number one, and number two, not paying off your loan. And we've just streamlined it for them and said, guess what? We're taking 10 grand off the bottom line, or 20 grand, depending on the whole Pell Grant issue. We're taking that right off the bottom line. Oh, wow. What else can I get for free? My head is going to explode when you look at the implications here. Now,
well, how does the president wake up? How does the president of University XYZ wake up this morning after we wiped out $10,000 to $20,000 in debt?
So I can tell you exactly what he's going to do.
They're smiling.
He got his pad out, and he's going to say, okay, what's the entrance level price for an incoming freshman? Oh, okay, room, board, books, the tuition. Well, let's see, but for the first semester, that's $68,000. Well, guess what? That just went up $5 grand. We're going to put that up $5 grand. No problem at all.
It's inflating the asset.
Absolutely.
This is proven. This is not a political thing. Every time
that's what they're doing.
Every time a government subsidizes loans into an industry, it could be EVs, it could be healthcare, it could be housing. When we determine that the American dream is home ownership, prices start going up. Every time the government gets involved in funding a industry, the asset inflates well north of the price of inflation, the rate of inflation.
Exactly.
It happened. This is not political. That's fact right there.
No, that's what our system is all about. But what's fueling this is a large segment of the population that can afford to pay for it. Okay, that's fine. There's no argument there. But their prices are going up too. And at some point, people were just... I fear what the results of this are going to be if we continue down this road.
You got to change the game.
At some point, something's going to get bankrupted at some point. Now, we can predict what that's going to be, but we don't have to go there if we don't want to.
This is a multi-phase. This is business owners. This is college presidents. This is the government. This is high school educators. This is like everyone's got skin in the game for this thing. Right. Here's the thing, and I'm going to do this with Dominic. Dominic, since he's been working now 3 years, he's piled up a little bit of money. And he knows the value of a buck.
By the way, shout out number 95 for Dominic Olivito, our producer of Hustle or Bust.
He goes to Great Adventure. Here's knowing the value of a buck. He goes to Great Adventure 3 weeks ago, and he buys chicken fingers for lunch. And it was $22, I think it was, for lunch. And he was bitching for 15 minutes on, number one, it wasn't good. It was overly salty. $22. How could it be $22? Then the next week we go to Wawa because we're staying overnight, and we get breakfast and we get lunch for two of us, and we spent $21 magically, right? How can we get 4 meals, 2 breakfasts, 2 lunch at Wawa for $21, and I had a crappy lunch, 1 meal at Great Adventure? He's like, this just doesn't seem right. He's understanding the value and the differences. He's making value judgments on a thing, and he knows what it takes to compile $21 because he's working, right? Now, let's just fast forward this. If Dominic wants to go to college, no problem. Guess what? 95% of what you earned, you're putting into college. You know the value of a buck. Now, Dominic's going to make that calculus that says, all right, college costs $40,000 a year. Let's say he's, whatever, pick a number. Let's say he's piled up $15,000. You mean to tell me, if he's scrutinizing $21 for chicken fingers at Great Adventure, if he's got to take 13 of his 15 and put it into college, he's not going to start asking questions like, is this worth it? What am I going to get? Hell yeah, he's going to.
Yeah, exactly.
He's only in that position, by the way, because he's working as a teenager, right? So he's earning money. Now he's got to make an investment decision with skin in the game. When 75% of the teens aren't earning, now maybe they're getting money from their parents, allowances, whatever. The parents got to have that kid with some skin in the game so they feel what it's like, and maybe they don't start saying, I think I'm going to drop out. At least then they got consequences. They pissed away their own money, right, into some of this thing. So parents got skin in the game. The point being, you're going to advocate for the kid to work or not, but they should be putting their own skin in the game on this thing.
Skin in the game, having skin in the game is just, it's one of the greatest teachers in the world. Okay, it's very, very simple. You want to eat, get a job. You need to earn something to eat. Stay warm. Put a roof over your head. It's the same thing with college. There's a whole group of, well, it raises the question. Well, we're still faced with this 1.7, trillion dollar problem. We're faced with that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are people out there who are genuinely hurting. What do you say to them? Do you forgive that?
That's why I say the easy way to get your head around it, just wipe it all out to zero. And now, so you clean the slate, but now you got to think, which I'm not in favor of. But let's just say you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got to fix the entire system.
And this is where I'm going. This is where I wanted to go with this.
So you can't find yourself back here in 8 years, and we will, with just doing the executive order yesterday is a Band-Aid, and we're going to find ourselves right back to it in a year, 2 years from now. So wipe it all the way down to zero. Now, how are you going to build a system and a structure where you don't find yourself back into this state in 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you got to change the dynamic. My ideas, which I've published and I wrote in June, are just one set of ideas. Nobody is debating the solutions here. All we're doing is bitching about, I had to pay, that's not fair for you to do it. Why do I got to take care of your loan? I didn't go to college. All of that is just, while it's valid criticism and debate, it doesn't fix the problem. All it does is complain about it. We got to change the system here.
Well,
the executive order did not do that.
No, it did not. And those people who, and I'm one of those people, I have every right to say, if Elizabeth Warren were sitting across the table, where's my money?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you get off taking my money to forgive somebody else's loan
mm-hmm.
when in fact you're giving me short shrift?
Mm-hmm.
I get nothing. I get absolutely nothing.
Right.
And I paid every dollar of my college education.
So it's valid, but it doesn't change the her plan was $50,000.
Yeah.
So all that did is take your 1.7 down to, let's just say, whatever, 500 billion. It still didn't fix the problem. We'd still be back here. We'd probably be back here quicker with $50,000. So again, that's why I said wipe it all out, start at zero, and now the mandate's got to be, let's not find ourselves back here in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years.
Where do we start?
Get the government out of the loans.
We have high school. They're part of the problem.
They are.
They're the feeder system.
Parents are part of the problem.
We've got the college. We've got government. So now we've got three of these institutions / markets that are at the epicenter of the problem. And we've got parents. Forget the student.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult to lay blame at the foot of an 18-year-old
right.
when in fact they are woefully trained
right.
to make any of these decisions, even on a minor scale.
Yep.
They're just, so you can't, that's part of the high school problem. Okay. I think that's a huge part of this. And then you've got the fourth problem, which is it's more of an idea than anything else, but it is the idea that you got to get a college education. Think smarter, not harder, or work smarter, not harder. If I see one more poster like that, I'm gonna go postal.
Right.
And we've talked about this amongst ourselves. Mike Rowe points that out very, 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 very specifically, and very, very well.
We need an alternative. I think.
But there, you've got 4 areas here that have to be attacked.
Right.
Now, the easy thing, the academics, those in college who would be the professors who would be thinking about it. Well, you're going to have to, in some way, shape, or form, you're going to have to attack each one. Each one's going to have a certain set of principles that they're going to have to follow. You're going to radically change everything. This is just not going to happen overnight. Of course not. Where do you start? Where do you start?
I think parents. Look, I think this cocktail party syndrome. We went to college, and can we actually envision our kids not going to college?
Yeah.
So look, it's fear. How I've gotten my mind around it is because My college degree, it was a great experience.
So how did you get your mind around it?
So I got my mind around it pretty simply. I value my college degree, and I think the economics have gone off the rail. So I've got to take a bridge step in my mind, because I got a kid who's 15 years old. He's going to be faced with this decision 3 years from now. But he's learned the value of a dollar. He's earning money. And he's a little bit, my wife and I joke, we call him a tightwad. So let's just say he's on a path to compile a nice sum of money. I don't know if that's going to be $15,000, $20,000. Let's just use $20,000 as a rough number by the time he's a senior in the bank. If I make him, if he wants to go to college, I'll support it and I'll fund it, and I'm not going to try and put debt on it. I'm fortunate enough not to be able to do it. But he's not going on my dime. He's going to take that $19,000. He can put his own skin in the game. If he's willing to do that, I'll back him. Then the question becomes, does the remaining $70,000 or $50,000, depending on what the cost is, does that fall on me? Or I'm going to think about it in terms of, all right, that's a $250,000 investment I've got to make, and I don't want him to put debt on his head. So I'm fortunate, right, if I can think through that. What if I thought of it as, what if I also give him the opportunity to do a startup, and I bankroll him, and he thinks through that way? But the number one thing, forget about what money I have to contribute to his future. Is he willing to make that choice and go through the calculus?
Sure.
If he is, I'm much more inclined. If he says, I ain't putting my $18,000 into it, what's his commitment going to be? Why would I force him to do that? And so I don't care about the cocktail party syndrome. And my parents are like, oh, he's too smart not to go to college. My parents say that. Now think about the words. He's too smart not to go to college. I think of it the other way. Maybe he's too smart to go to college if he's not willing to put his money in there. So I think the parents have a massive role. If parents are college educated, those kids are going to be predisposed to go to college. I mean, this is generational.
The cocktail party idea.
It's such a big, overwhelming.
And it goes another step further. It's where you go to college.
That's right.
Okay. Oh, well, so Billy's going to Columbia.
Right.
Let's see. He's going to start matriculating in September.
Right.
Columbia. That's a big nut.
Right.
Oh, he's going to Princeton. Okay. Well, by the way, Princeton had what's the endowment in Princeton?
Billions.
It's something north. I think it's something north of $30 billion.
Yeah, it's a hedge fund
on average per student. It's 2.3
What'd you call it?
million.
A hedge fund with chairs?
I didn't call it that. Somebody else did.
Great analogy.
It's a hedge fund. It's a hedge fund with classrooms, and the classrooms they're an afterthought. Okay, we've got this whole system over here that we can support. It's running pretty well with tenure. We have tenure. By the way, I now have tenure at Paverart. I'm going to start.
Remember that scene in Major League? Charlie Sheen and it was Charlie Sheen, his manager. One of the guys go up to the manager and said, I know you want me to do push-ups and laps around the diamond, but my contract here says I don't have to do it. Remember what he did? Remember that scene? The manager throws his contract on the ground and he urinates all over the contract.